But if you turn off because you've been punished too many times, you've failed a phishing test too many times, you stop wanting to pay attention. And that's a real turnoff for a lot of people. And it leads to low engagement at companies. It leads to a poor cybersecurity culture at businesses.
You're watching Rise and Shine, your business tech boost with me, Charly Leetham. I've been in technology for over 40 years and I've been running Ask Charly Leetham for nearly 2 decades. People hire me so they can do what they do best, run their business, while I handle the tech that keeps everything else running. This podcast gives you practical advice you can actually use, straight talk about what works and what doesn't. Today, I have a guest and I'm so excited for this guest. Craig Taylor is a certified, I'm going to say this really slowly, certified information systems security professional, a CISSP, a 30-year veteran of cybersecurity, and in 2014 he co-founded Cyber Hoot to teach cyber literacy through positive reinforcement and gamification so people actually enjoy learning, living the motto, laugh, learn, hoot up. Okay, we're going to actually talk about what all that means in a moment. Okay. Craig, thank you so much for joining us.
Charly, it's my pleasure to be here. I really appreciate it. Would you like me to go into any more details about my background?
Yeah, look, I know you had a whole heap of other things that you passed across to me, and I actually like my guests to talk about themselves a little bit. So please tell us a little bit more and maybe give us a little bit more background on what I just shared there.
Sure. So my purpose in this world is to help educate people, I think, on cybersecurity skills. I know from your recent podcast, you've talked about a lot of common sense things. Don't make mistakes on the cybersecurity realm. Think before you click and those sorts of things. And that's really what our company Cyber Hoot does. We do through positive reinforcement. It's a multidisciplinary approach. If you look at the science behind behavior change, you need to go to psychology and education, not cybersecurity. The cybersecurity's got it wrong. It's doing a lot of shame and punishment of bad behaviors, which leads to no extinguishing of those behaviors, when it should be reinforcing the good behaviors. We'll get into that more in a minute. Going back to my background, 30 plus years ago, and by the way, I can't believe you've been in technology for 40 years. You don't look nearly old enough. So that is good on you. But that goes even back to maybe tape drives or punch cards if you're going 40 years, because I'm 30 years in the industry.
Not quite. I was on the edge of punch cards. It was the big floppy disks had just come in when I was starting. Yeah.
Okay.
Tapes. I've got stories about recording.
I used to use the hole punch on the floppy disk to get them dual-sided, right? You could punch
them. Yeah.
You had to flip them and get another recording on it. Oh my goodness. So we won't bore your listeners with that. But 30 plus years ago, I got a degree in psychology. I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I started psychology. I studied human behavior, operant conditioning, positive and negative reinforcement, punishment theories, all the good stuff that actually plays into Cyber Hoot, my company today, that help people engage with this topic of cyber literacy, because it can seem overwhelming to people at times. But I'll be honest with your listeners, it's actually a lot of common sense with just a little bit of knowledge mixed in. But if you turn off because you've been punished too many times, you've failed a phishing test too many times, you stop wanting to pay attention. And that's a real turnoff for a lot of people. And it leads to low engagement at companies. It leads to a poor cybersecurity culture at businesses. And your employees become bigger targets for phishing, social engineering, password hygiene mistakes. But if you can encourage them and gamify things, which is our call to action at Cyber Hoot, then people engage and they learn that little bit of knowledge and they apply their common sense. And by and large, it helps you avoid a lot of the big mistakes that companies and people are making. Outside of my day-to-day cybersecurity life, I'm also a Rotarian, and I'm a parent, a father. I do fundraising for cancer research. Over the last 15 years, I've written in an annual fundraiser called the Pan Mass Challenge, where we raise money for a cancer research institute in New England in the US. And to date, that cancer fundraiser has raised over $1 billion US. That's with a B since 1980 for
That's
unrestricted
amazing.
funds for cancer research. And I've contributed about $150,000 US through my fundraising efforts. So that's me in a nutshell.
It sounds like you got a lot going on, and that's amazing with the fundraising. So good to hear. And I actually wanted to just cover, you were talking about operant conditioning and the training behaviors. I'm a dog trainer. I spent many years as a young woman as a dog trainer, and my dad and I actually introduced operant conditioning into the territory that we lived in, and we rewrote the training manuals for the dog clubs that we were part of, so that or one particular dog club. So we actually introduced operant conditioning training there, clicker training. So I really love it. And I raised my kids on clicker training, and I got so many stories about how your kids respond to that type of training. My son today still has a behavior, and I'll do something and he'll go, "I hate you so much, Mum."
Well, the alternatives, if he had ever had to go through the shock collar approach of dog training, that's not fun for anybody, not the trainers, not the dogs, and it actually leads to disengagement. And that's kind of what we see in cybersecurity today. There's a lot of science that supports clicker training, operant conditioning, positive reinforcement. Look, B.F. Skinner, who did the Pavlov dog, click a lever, get a reward of food. He said, paraphrasing 75 years ago, that rewarded behaviors are repeated. And he never once said, and any science since in psychology has said, punished behaviors are extinguished. They just aren't. It's an external locus of control. Punishment comes from outside of you, whereas positive reinforcement is internalized more often, especially if it's small rewards. If it's a huge reward, it's not going to be internalized. But small rewards are internalized, which leads to an internal locus of control. That just means I want to do it because I believe in it. And I don't want to be punished because I don't want my business or my organization to fire me. And that just doesn't change behaviors. And so psychology has known that, but cybersecurity seems to have lost that by and large for the last 25, 30 years. It's just a young, immature industry, and it needs to look at multidisciplinary approach to what it wants to accomplish.
Well, I could go on for days about operant conditioning and all of the things around it, but I know we've got something we want to talk about. So let's talk about cybersecurity. Let's talk about. I actually want to just touch on that. You said, it still punishes the behaviour, and I want to ask the question and make an observation. I think that's because the impact of getting cybersecurity wrong is so large that the first thing people do is stop doing that behavior, and the only way they can think about stopping it is to come down and drop the hammer on people without realizing that and sometimes you have to do that. Sometimes you've got to do that first shock. You've got to stop now, but then you've got to go back and retrain that behavior. So can we talk about that? And I think that's going to lead into why you actually created your company and what you're doing within your company. So let's go there.
Yes. So you're absolutely right. There are situations in life where you have to use, I don't want to say force, but let's say your child is running towards the road and is not catching your attention. You're not catching their attention. I myself have shouted many, many decibels loudly at my child who's running towards the road to get their attention, or my dog for that matter, and they stop because they're shocked at the just how loud the shout is. Nobody ever yells like that. What's going on? And they freeze. And that's the purpose of it. You can't have them get killed by a car. In a business, people, I think, apply the same logic, where clicking on a phishing link is so dangerous that it can lead to a ransomware event, a business email compromise that eventually leads to wire fraud, that we must punish it with the same ferocity. But that's not the case. That's not true, because it causes a unfortunate side effect that as more and more people fail, there's a culture of sort of disengagement that takes hold. People don't want to do their training. They don't want to watch their videos. They don't want to do their phishing simulations. And they basically forward everything to the IT team to tell me, is this safe? Is it not safe? I've given up trying to figure it out. I got fooled one too many times. And, really perfectly reasonable and intelligent people have told me they just do this strategy to cope with the punishment and shame effect because they don't want to make another mistake, right? But that's a tragic culture to live in and be a part of, right? In the US, some banks will fire you for 3-clicked phishing links, right, on the test messages that they send out.
No.
And yeah, they do, and because they have a zero tolerance for risk. But if your ultimate outcome is to create a place where people want to work, a place where they feel empowered to ask questions, to report things that maybe it isn't a phish, but it's a good thing to check and get positively reinforced and called out publicly when they're compliant with their phishing simulations or their video trainings on password hygiene or USB stick security, that sort of stuff, then you're creating a culture where people actually enjoy doing their cyber literacy training. They engage more. When you add gamification to your earlier point, and I'm really excited about this as well, then they participate even more forcefully, almost as though, you know how some businesses have introduced Get Fit projects where you walk as a team and one team competes against another, how many, they wear the little Fitbit and they measure how many miles they've walked this month, and the team with the highest mileage gets some special reward. It's a known trigger for engagement and for participation. And we recently here's an interesting story, Charlie. We introduced leaderboards about 3 months ago to our platform. And we thought it was another extension to gamification, and it might increase participation a little bit. It increased participation enormously, and it hit a very reticent group of individuals at companies that traditionally don't do their training. Leadership, the C-suite, the senior executives of the companies. And here's why. We published to their, score, to their page, their status in the company. What rank are you out of 55 people at your company? And if you've never done anything, you're dead last. And you don't become a leader in a company finishing dead last in anything. And so suddenly leaders of companies were getting compliant, and out of the blue, they're like, we can't be last. And they would make the edict, everyone must do this. And the side effect was they became more cyber literate, and they probably enjoyed doing it. But it was a really interesting, unexpected outcome that gamification led to this special population of users that are notorious for saying, my secretary will do my email for me. I don't need to do training, and I don't need this, or I don't need that. I'm not targeted. All the different excuses they tell themselves, and then suddenly they're doing it. So what a wonderful outcome.
So that hits a couple of things there. One is it actually hits that I don't want to be last, the competitive nature. And if you're a leader, you tend to have a fairly competitive nature. You don't rise in ranks by being complacent, basically.
Right.
And we were talking about we don't shame people. That's shaming them.
Well, it isn't.
Nicely.
No, let me caveat that. It's an anonymous leaderboard. So we don't publish to the other employees each other's rank. We only publish your own rank. So we're doing it
even better.
In the humane way possible, right?
But that's really cool.
Yeah,
that is so cool. Then, so you mentioned. So you just mentioned something there. I just want to sort of touch on it. You mentioned that the C-suite and the leaders go, oh, my secretary will do all that, or my VA will do all that, or my assistant will do all that, and I'm not targeted. How can they in this day and age? And I don't know if you can answer it. How can they in this day and age say they're not targeted? Like, do they really believe that, or is that an excuse?
It's just an excuse, right? I
Okay.
honestly, or they think they're too smart that they'll be able to spot when they're targeted, and they won't fall victim to it, right? But we all know from your experience and mine that the phishing emails are getting better because they're consuming our social media profiles and they're sending things appealing to us, not just anonymous, the prince in, the old Nigerian prince scheme,
Nigerian
or
prince.
other things like that. I mean, I haven't even seen one of those in my history, but I have seen multiple phishing attempts that come in very specific to the individuals targeted in a one-off kind of email system. And AI is super powering and scaling that up. And I'm not even getting into deep fakes, which that's another realm altogether. But the reality is leadership they're busy. And we and most companies deliver these assignments today via email. You might have a couple leaders in a business getting 200-300 emails a day, and they just don't have time to do it. Yeah. But they find the time and they make the time when they're last on the leaderboard, even though no one else sees it. They might be found out and they can't be last. So it brings their competitive juices and they start doing them. Now, would you mind if I read an email I got this week from someone about the leaderboard?
Please do, that'd be great.
It's just a short little outtake I want to tell you about. So this person writes to us, I've done all my assignments the same as my colleague, but I'm perplexed at why I am ranked 5th when my scores are exactly the same as Victoria's. Until this week, I was 1st, but now I'm 5th. From the stats, I have completed less assignments, but my assignments are up to date. So I'm wondering what's going on. And P.S., I'm that person who, when swimming laps, secretly races everyone I can see under the lane ropes and at the gym. I'm that person who secretly competes with other class members to stretch further in yoga or try to lift similar weights to others my age in my HIIT classes. It's a personality trait. Don't judge. That's what our leaderboards have triggered in folks. And now we have to explain why they might be behind on something or not. And so we're doing that. We're going to do better at explaining how we calculate that. But what a wonderful outcome for people to forget about the work of doing assignments and think of the game of competing with colleagues and friends. We have friends that you can actually add to your own little leaderboard, so you can compete with friends and see their rank and your rank.
Nice. That's good.
Knew Victoria was above or below because they've added them to their own friends page in our platform to allow them to compete in friendly competition, right? So it's had a huge impact, and it's the future of, I think, cyber literacy training is to make it more gamified.
Yeah, and remove that stigma. So I actually wanted to just address the fact that, you said people, when you punish it, they don't engage as much. They just forget about it. They forward the emails on. The other thing I found they do is they don't report incidents. So
right.
they know they've been hit. They know they've done something they shouldn't have done, but they're not going to tell you because they're going to get a lecture and they're going to be made to feel like they're idiots, and they're going to be made to feel, you know that this is a bad link. And if I might, at the risk of talking too much, I had a very, very close friend come to me 2 days ago and said, I've had to cancel my credit card. And I said, what did you do? They said, I got a text message in. I had just finished doing this fun exercise that I really enjoy doing. I'd just come in. I'd picked up my phone. There was a text message on my phone saying your Qantas points are going to expire. Fix it now. And I went, I'll do that right now. And they clicked the link. They put in their credit card details. And what triggered them was it then asked them to create an account. And I went, what? And they stopped right there, but the credit card's done. So they had to ring the bank and cancel the credit card. Said, show me the SMS you got. It's come from a really weird phone number. The link was obviously not the right link, but it got that point of urgency, and it got that point that they had something they knew they had to do. It triggered it, and they got it. Now, they came to me and told me this because I wasn't going to make them feel like a fool. I wasn't going to lecture them on it.
We're going to share it on your podcast with millions of people, so there's no more Qantas, points scams going on.
Correct. And, just stop and check. And what I did was I walked them through the email. I walked them through the SMS. I said, this is what you needed to check. And honestly, it didn't have to be done right then. You should have just paused and, yeah, I know. They're here. That's fine. Here, have another beer. We're good.
I have a little, like, I share this with friends and family, but I use the acronym PAR, PAR. We don't build it into our training because when you do acronyms and you translate into 17 languages, the acronyms don't work. But
Right.
For you and your listeners in the English-speaking world, PAR means pause, assess, report. That's simple, right? If you're in a business and you have something that's not quite right or urgent, like the biggest note is that hackers know, and psychologists and cybersecurity specialists know, if I can get you to react, you're going to click on things before you've thought it through. And I get you to react by urgency and emotionality built into these emails. And it used to be generic urgency, generic emotionality. Your account's been locked, you're overdue, and all these generic things. Now they look at your social media profiles or your posts or your podcast, and they'll know, oh, hey, Charlie was a dog trainer. Let me send her a 25% off for Chewy to order stuff. And if she acts now, she'll get 35%. So it's urgent and it's emotional and it appeals to you, right? That's what they're doing. So anytime you get an email that kind of feels like I have to do this right now, you need to pause. Just give yourself even one deep breath and then say, does this make sense? Check the sender. If it doesn't make sense, and look for one-letter differences on the domain name. Chewy might be with a I on the end, not a Y, or you know what I mean? Like it's going to be, Typo Squad is going to be a little bit off. And then all things considered, just go to the real website through a Google search or an AI search and just see if it makes sense, or call the person, or call the company to say, did you send this, right?
Yep. I agree entirely, and I say it all the time. I go blue in the face saying it, but I just wanted to share that because it's such a topical thing, and it really sort of ties into what you were talking about. So we were talking about the gamification. We were talking about the platform. I use Duolingo to do languages.
Nice. They have gamification.
The leaderboard is the leaderboard isn't so important to me. What's important to me is my daily streak. I like to keep my daily streak. I'm not as competitive as some people, mostly because I look at it like I don't have the time to put into this to keep my leaderboard going. But the daily streak is important to me.
Right.
It's those sorts of things. It's that positive reinforcement. It's that you've done something. Here's a small reward for it. Here's something to say, good girl, you've done your lesson today.
Yeah. And it's just, you know what, it's a little, maybe it's a serotonin boost in your mood, but if it works at lightening your mood or making you feel good about yourself, there's nothing wrong with it, especially when you consider we're teaching you a vital skill that's going to protect you personally and professionally. So ultimately, I think, it's just like being a good teacher in the classroom. If you can engage the students in ways that make them want to learn about a topic, you're a successful teacher. And the students become successful students.
Look, absolutely. I totally agree. And I want to try and get back onto what cybersecurity and what businesses need to be doing. So we've spoken about what your platform does to a small degree. Why don't you talk to me about how a business would engage with this, or how a person might engage with this? What sort of clients have you had come to you? How has this all come about? Just tell me a little bit more about the platform, how it works for people.
Genesis?
Yeah.
Sure. So 14 years ago, I was fired from a bank. And I had to do some soul searching and say, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? Did you want to add something?
No. You said you got fired if you clicked on a phishing link.
It was much different from that. The bank had an issue about 15 years ago, a breach of a charity website that they ran. They hired a CISO for every business division they had. and each business division also hired a CISO. So we worked in tandem for 18 months. I was at the corporate part of the bank, and this was a local CISO. We were in competition with one another, and I lost. Now, I could also tell you my boss who hired me to run this position in this division of the bank, he didn't stay for my first day even. So I had no corporate support from the head office, and I was remote in this little division. Yep. Anyways, after 18 months, after a very nice bonus in February, I was released in March, or January bonus, February. I think it was Valentine's Day I was released. I was let go. So at the end of the day, it was the best thing that ever happened to me, to be honest. Through these difficult situations and challenges come great things, and I decided to found my company, Cyber Hoot. So that's the genesis. I didn't found it by myself. I went back to some employees, some colleagues of mine from a previous job who were also looking to do something new. And we basically started it as a part-time thing. I went and worked for a small managed service provider in IT. I was their CISO. I built a thriving virtual CISO practice that fed into the platform. What are we seeing from attacks and breaches? And that goes into what we train on in the platform. So it was a nice synergy there. But we struggled at first to do the traditional fake email phishing tests against the companies and build that into our platform. And it was hard to do. It was of limited utility because you use these dumbed down domain names as the sending domain of a fake email. You might send something as pretending to be from Microsoft, and the domain name that we use to send it is account resets or us. Nothing at all like Microsoft. That's not how hackers hack. They hack by changing one letter, not every letter. So we were teaching the wrong skills, and we only had compliance scores for whoever opened the email, right? If you didn't open the email, which is a common problem these days, sometimes you send out an attack phishing campaign. That's what I call this, gotcha emails that people click on and then they get shamed and they have to talk to HR or their boss. Only 40 or 50% of the employees at a company will open that email and then pass or fail the test because they click on it or they don't, and fewer still report it. But you're missing half your staff because they didn't even see the email. They just didn't get to it. They bulk deleted it or whatever. There was no training. And it's not training. This is not training. Let me be clear. That is measuring what people know. So we pivoted at Cyber Hoot, my company, and we created an interactive assessment tool that is open book. So you get told, Charlie, this is your phishing test for the month. Click here to bring you to the browser-based email. And then we're going to quiz you by walking you through the sender and ask you, does this look safe or suspicious? And you have to inspect the URL. And you have open book to say, well, you should look for differences off one letter. You should Google the domain name of the vendor to make sure it's exactly the same. That's how you know if the sender is good. But that in and of itself isn't the only thing you check. Then you look at the subject. Are there spelling mistakes? Is there urgency and emotionality tied into the subject? The greeting might be generic. Most companies use your name. They want to build rapport. The emotionality and urgency of the body of the message, links in the message, attachments in the message. Here's what you look for, all of those things. And if you successfully navigate through that, you pass the test. But there's no shame. There's no punishment for failure. You get to retry if you don't get it right the first time. It's an open book, and we tell you exactly where you made your mistakes and what you need to think about. So ultimately, people might take 2 or 3 times, but they pass the test. And they're creating a little bit of rote memorization. There's a rubric that we're teaching them, right? And so with practice, this lady that I just quoted you a moment ago said she likes the high intensity interval training, HIIT. It's a workout phenomenon. You can get a half-hour workout in 5 minutes if you do it right. We do that with cyber literacy classes and the assignments that we deliver, because the Hootfish exercise I'm describing to you takes 30 seconds at most to complete, and it's muscle memory, so that the next time you get a suspicious email, you go, oh, wait, what was my training? Sender, oh my goodness, look at that. The M is an R and an N side by each. How devious, That's the kind of thing hackers are doing.
Yeah. Okay. So, one of the questions that came up in all of that is, how do you have people that just perpetually fail it, that just perpetually get it wrong?
Yes. Yeah, we have people that are seemingly untrainable. I have one in my family who calls me fairly regularly about stuff, and I have to try and figure a way out of the phone call because there's I think sometimes there's very little you can do. Now, that's a generation that didn't grow up with computers and are a little illiterate when it comes to that. So we have found someone in the one of my brothers handles the finances of this person. But the reality is some people do continuously fail, and it's just like in a classroom. You try to teach to the middle, you give some extra assignments to the high performers, and you try to spend just a little extra time with the low performers to pull them up to that middle range. And sometimes you're successful, sometimes you're not. But at the end of the day, you can identify who those folks are. And so you can also take other precautions. For example, maybe you have an engineering staff in your company and you grant that engineering staff a secondary administrative account so they can do installations of software or printer drivers or do some extra things on their computer without IT being involved. Well, individuals that continuously fail their phishing simulations and aren't completing their assignments absolutely should not have the privileges to install things or click on things or even run as an administrator on their local workstation. You might also limit the data that they have access to and maybe their job responsibilities if you get down to it. Yes, that's the unfortunate truth. I mean, everybody would love to say, no, everybody can learn. It's easy and it's not, it's just common sense. I'm not sure that there is enough common sense to go around in this world sometimes, but it isn't rocket science by any stretch. So if you have any sort of average intelligence, you can learn this stuff 100%. It's not difficult for the...
My question was more so business owners can understand that you might end up with someone who, it doesn't matter how good your programs are, it doesn't matter how much training you've offered them, you're still going to have these problems occur. That to me actually then flows into things that are outside of cyber security. It is your risk management. It's, you know, this is, and as you said, what permissions do you give them? What data do they have? What position should they actually have within your business? If you've got, for example, a VA who's working with you and you've put them through this training and they're habitually failing on one or two parts of it, then you don't give them access to the systems that are going to let that make a big difference to you. Maybe you need to reassign them. Maybe they just need to be moved to a different part of the business. And that's why I was asking, you know, because I have had people say, oh, everyone can learn. I'm like, I'm not sure that's the case. I
don't think it is.
There's a small percentage that have trouble.
Yeah, and honestly, not every business needs cyber literacy training for everyone. If you have a manufacturing plant and the only time your line workers use a computer is a shared computer to check their schedule or to clock in and out, those kinds of things, they're not using email. They're not really getting putting any business at risk by clicking on things. I think it's okay to avoid it in those scenarios. So it's like you said, it's a risk management. You have to manage the risk according to what they have access to and can do.
Awesome. Okay. And for the ones that are like doing really well, like I take it your system rewards them.
Yes, they climb the leaderboard. They have avatars. We start with a baby owl and then it grows in ferocity, eventually getting a sword and a shield and these sorts of things. But it just represents their journey as they graduate, kind of like, you know, in martial arts, you have a white belt, then a brown belt, all the way up to a black belt. Well, those signify that you have achieved certain competencies in that martial art. And we have the same labels for cyber literacy competency. So that's one thing. The gamification is the leaderboard that people compete on with each other to make sure they do their assignments on time with perfect scores. So they're paying close attention, that sort of thing. We also have certificates of completion because, let's face it, a lot of people have continuing education requirements in their area of study and their job responsibilities. You have 10 hours a year, 12 hours, 15, 20. Well, Cyber Hoot can give you little 15-minute certificates for each of your assignments, and they add up. You could get 6 hours in the course of a year if you do 24 assignments. So why not?
Not a lot. That's to a month. That's to a month. Yeah.
Yeah.
And now, have you found companies of actually bringing that into their own reward system? So not just are they being rewarded on Cyber Hoot? Cyber Hoot? Yeah, Cyber Hoot.
Mm-hmm.
Are they actually getting extra rewards? Like, have you heard about companies actually bringing that into their own remuneration and reward systems?
I absolutely have, right? You have companies where you have multiple divisions and they compete with one another, and then once a quarter they'll give a lunch away to the division at the highest level of compliance, and it's because they might be a regulated company and they cannot afford to have low scores here. There's a win-win for everybody. There's fewer emergencies in the companies that have done their training. Look, when we built this, we were at an MSP, and I'll tell you a little metric that makes a difference. The MSP had 50 clients, and we got 40 clients into the platform. Okay, this is going back some number of years before we even had the gamification. Of the 40 companies in the platform, over 3 years, there were 2 minor security events. Of the 10 companies who refused to be put into the learning management platform to learn cyber literacy skills, there were 2 major breaches and 2 terminations from the MSP. Not tied to the breaches, funnily enough. They kind of felt themselves responsible for refusing training and being breached and not listening to our advice. And so they stayed with us, and then they joined the training platform after the fact. You know, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you. But the reality was the metrics add up. The clients that are in these platforms, and it doesn't have to just be cyber, but it has to be a positive, not a shame and punishment approach. If you find another positive tool and you can reward the good behaviors and call out employees who do a good job of reporting, who if they see something, say something, and you reward them publicly, just even calling them out on team calls or all hands meetings, it shows that you care and that it's a culture of reporting things, even if it's a mistake, you know, then you're going to succeed. And guess what? You're going to have fewer nights and weekends with your most expensive IT resources recovering from data, from backups because of a business email compromise, or having to write the email notification to all your clients that you got this email from John in accounting, but it wasn't John and you should ignore it, but don't open it. You know, like, who wants to write those things? You want to avoid that embarrassment.
Okay, so it sounds like, have you got different levels? And you know, I want to talk more a little bit about the security and security training, but within your platform, do you have like a lower business level and then an enterprise level? How do businesses actually use this for their own staff and their own subcontractors?
Yeah, so we do have different subscription levels, right? Based on usage and the number. So it's really a pricing difference. As you grow the number of users, the price reduces. Right. It's free for individuals. I think I can mention that if you go to cyberhoot.com/individuals, you can register for free and get all this training for as long as you want it. Our patent pending phishing exercise is called Hootfish. That's the one that walks you through with the wizard. That has levels. So the levels that we built into our platform are designed to increase the difficulty as your proficiency goes up. So after a year of regular easy mode Hootfish, we change the metrics for you, make it a little more difficult. After you get to the difficult level, after say 2 years and 10 of these or more, you go to difficult, and the wizard that walks you through the email disappears. Now you have to remember, just like in your inbox, what do I look at? Okay, I should check the sender. That looks good. No, it looks suspicious. There's the RN trick, or there's the I, or the period in the wrong place. That's suspicious. And there's this strange attachment. I don't like that at all. That's suspicious. And there's definitely urgency here, so that's suspicious. And I think that's it. Submit. oh, I got 3 out of 4 right. I missed the greeting was generic or whatever. So that's how it increases in difficulty. But for enterprises, we just give really aggressive pricing. Enterprises need this more than even the SMB world or the mid-market, because they've ruined their culture with this zero tolerance to risk and firing people for failure. And I do believe there's a place for that. Just as if you're in a classroom or dog training, let me put it to you this way. You do this wonderful click training with your dogs, positive reinforcement, but then you come to the end of the class and you have a showcase and you want to test the dog in front of all the other dogs, maybe even bring in some distraction dogs. And you say, can this dog perform even when there's another dog yapping or walking around free? Can it still listen to the command and do its thing? That's the final exam for the dog. There's a final exam in every university class in genetics and physics and science and math. That's what you use the attack fish for. You do a whole year of training with your staff, and after they've been trained the appropriate way, reinforced for displaying good behaviors, then you can throw, even in our platform, Cyber Hoot, we can send out an attack fish to make sure they're paying attention, to make sure they've internalized and they aren't making that mistake, because you do still need to measure if people are going to or not going to click or not, right? It is a critical mistake when they do. So there is a place for it. It just can't be the sole focus. It has to be a much further down the road approach.
Yeah. Okay. Now, and as a business, do the business owners or the management team actually get access to the statistics and who's done the training and who hasn't done the training? Like, do they have a dashboard? Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. There's a dashboard in the platform. Almost all the platforms have reporting and dashboards. Some are better, some are worse. Ours is pretty good. It gives you a scorecard for your business on how risky your business is based on the overall performance of your users. But what's really nice is we have better metrics in a number of places. Like when we send out that Hootfish assignment, we get very, very close, if not to 100% of users finding and doing their training, their assignment, because we're not tricking them and they're not ignoring an email. If they don't do the assignment, we remind them twice. And every future assignment, if they go back, if they haven't done a previous assignment, when they finish their future assignment, we pop up a screen that says, hey, wait, you have one more that you have to go back and do. You missed it, right? So we're always getting you very, very close to 100% compliance for your videos, your Hootfish exercises, your custom hoots, your governance policies. We can send a password policy for legally binding signature that I'll follow these prescriptions of 15-character password stored in a password manager, tied to multi-factor, passkey adoption when it's available. Okay, I know what I need to do. I've gotten the written instructions and the governance policy. I'll sign off on that. Now your employees know when it's their own discretionary control, they can do the right thing, versus the technical mandatory controls that IT sets in place in the systems they control, right? So there's all these different variables here. Small businesses can load Cyber Hoot up and be done with training and get it rolled out 30 minutes max. And then it just runs itself. You don't pick a single video or a phishing simulation or anything. It just randomly assigns these. We build the video program every year based on what we see in the industry from an emerging threats. We've just redone our foundational videos, Charlie, to include an AI security video. Because a lot of companies are worried about AI, but they don't know what to worry about. They don't know what they don't know, right? Yeah. So we're educating them in the AI space. You need to think about what data are you putting into it. Is it public? Is it in a public LLM? Well, you shouldn't put your intellectual property into a public LLM. You shouldn't put your health records into a public LLM. You shouldn't put your financial records into a public LLM. But you could deploy what's called a SLM, a small language model. They're building these things smaller and smaller so you can have it on-prem. Funnily enough, you and I remember everything was on-prem. It moved to cloud. Now we're going to be moving it back to on-prem for AI. That's a weird scenario, but it is happening.
Well, yeah, I mean, I look at the cloud stuff and I'm like, that shouldn't be in the cloud. You just need to hold that one locally. Don't put it in the cloud. It's too valuable to you. So there was a couple of things there. First of all, you said that you are redoing your education pretty much every year. So you're looking at what the new threats are coming through.
Yes.
And updating it, which is fantastic because that I can imagine that dates pretty quickly too.
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Believe it or not, password hygiene has been an issue for 25 years. Phishing
Yep.
has been an issue for 25 years. Those haven't changed. They're still number 1 and 2 for mid-market and smaller. Once you get into enterprises, you start looking at, tech debt and unpatched systems and sprawl and other problems that lead people in. But yeah, a lot of the problems are the same. Now, things that have changed, really, the development of AI has now made, even romance scams are driven sometimes by an AI chatbot. You could be thinking you're talking to a human being, but it's an AI, and you don't. And so hackers are getting very creative. So, we're covering things like that every year, each year.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. And but even just like phishing's been a problem for time immemorial. Those phishing scams are becoming more complex and more smart. I know that's not the right word, but they're becoming more astute.
Impactful. So when you click, there's more damage done. They're becoming more frequent because AI is allowing them to scale. They're becoming more personalized. There's fewer tells in these emails because the grammar and language quality is perfect. Like if I wrote an email to someone in Australia, I would probably miss some of the nuances like "good day, mate" and some of that stuff, but I could put it into AI and create exactly what I wrote in the US English and turn it into Australian English, and you wouldn't know.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So that's kind of what I mean about updating all of your systems, is that you pick up these little nuances that come through and have to address them in terms of this is the new thing that you've got to look at. Now, you mentioned getting the dashboards and getting the statistics. Have you had businesses actually using that within their own or with their insurances and with their protection policies to get discounts or to ensure that they can be insured? Because that to me is going to be the next big thing for business in general. Insurance companies are going to say you're not insurable.
You have touched on a very sore point that I have, and that is this. Insurance companies have safe driver discounts, which they can put a device in your car. You don't speed that much, and you slow down slowly and you speed up slowly, and you're generally a low risk. We'll give you a discount. If you do your cyber literacy trainings, whether it's a phishing simulation, a positive reinforcement, if you get high compliance in your business, I am not aware of any insurance provider that has yet been able to get the actuarial tables to predict the lower cost of insuring that company so that they can pass along savings. It's coming, but it's not here yet. And I've been saying this for 10 years that I know these things work. I've been in an MSP with 50 clients, and the ones that got breached were the ones not in training. And so there's got to be a correlation there, but they just are so immature. They don't have it just yet. It's coming though. And there might be a couple out there that are doing it that I'm not aware of, but it is a requirement for you to do training and govern and test your users on these things for cyber insurance today. And you can't fake it. If you're a business owner and you're listening to this and you check that box, but you're not doing it, know this. In a breach, when they ask for the records, you won't have them and you won't get paid, and you'll be stuck with the ransomware bill.
Right. So that's the other side of that question that I was asking then, is yes, they can use it, but they use it on the other side after something happens. They've got the records there to protect themselves and make sure they get their payouts and make sure they get their coverage. It's funny you say that. I got my professional indemnity insurance renewal this week, and there was a note on it for my cyber insurance, because I have cyber, course. And there was a note on it from my broker saying, we have actually managed to get you a discount because you've got such a clean record.
Oh, Well,
Um,
that's
so
interesting. Was the claim
yeah,
record because you've had no claims from a
yes,
cyber perspective?
yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So that's creating some longevity of no claims, and that's interesting. I still think there might be a combination of that, no claims over a period of, say, 3 to 5 years, but also consistent high performance in whatever tool you're using. Now, I think some of the problem, Charlie, might be that if you're using shame and punishment, you're not really changing behaviors. So there's really not a predictive value. There was a study last year in the United States of a large healthcare provider with 10,000 employees who did 12 months or 8 months, I think, in the study of phishing simulations and then follow up when people made mistakes. And what they concluded was the control group, who got no training, was only 1.7% more likely to click than the group that received all this training across 10,000 users
Wow,
in 8 months. And that was
wow.
the punishment-based approach. So we actually have two studies. We have two universities studying Cyber Hoot right now because they believe the gamification and the positive reinforcement
Okay,
and the
yeah.
rewarding good behaviors will show a better outcome. And we're trying to build a way of testing that. It's not trivial, but it is something that I think we'll be able to prove and maybe even tie to our patent application. But yeah, it is it's a common problem out there where these metrics aren't beneficial, and the cyber insurance is unable to predict things the way they should, partly because the industry is misaligned, I think.
Yeah, and as you said, it's still it's still relatively young. I mean, even 30 years is still relatively young for an industry, and it moves so fast. I was just interested to see whether people were actually using that to see what they could get. I'd be interested to see how that goes over the next 12 months to 2 years, because I think we will see a change there, as we see all of the risks ratchet up.
Mhm.
I'm looking at our time here. We're kind of getting to the edge of it. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how people can find you,
Sure.
where they can connect with you as a person, and then about your business? I like to do that. We have spoken a lot about your product today and your services. I hope people have got information out of it as to why it's important for you as a business owner to use this sort of stuff. So,
Mhm.
Craig.
So you can reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn, Craig M. Taylor. My company is Cyber Hoot. I'm the CEO, co-founder here. If you want a demo, the fastest way to book one is to send an email to sales@cyberhoot.com or just visit cyberhoot.com. And if you sign up and you use the Ask Charlie Leetham as the referral code, we'll give you 20% off for the first year for whatever cost that you have, your entire business. If you're a nonprofit, we like to give discounts for nonprofits, so make sure you mention that. And we do have extra small, sign up for smaller businesses that might not be published in our website for pricing. So if you only have 10 or fewer people, let us know, and we'll arrange for a special price for you.
Oh, fabulous. Well, thank you so much for that. And I will have all of these details in the show notes, guys. I'd encourage you to go and have a look at it. You need to be learning this stuff. As business owners, you need to know this stuff. You need to be practicing it, and you need to be
Right.
refreshing yourself regularly on it. Honestly, it's just, it's such a big area, and it's got such, as Craig said, it's very impactful. If it goes wrong, it will go wrong spectacularly.
Can I leave you with one final analogy?
Please do.
So I think we talked about this earlier, but I really don't like working out at the gym, but I do think physical fitness is important. So I trick myself by playing sports. I play hockey and golf and mountain biking and all this stuff. And I'm doing this workout, this exercise, but it's hidden in a game, right? And so it doesn't feel like work. It feels like play. And playing, I get the same effect. So when you go to solve your cyber literacy problem in the world, find a tool. If it's not cyber, it's something else that is a playful approach to teaching and rewarding good behaviors. And your employees will appreciate it. They'll view it as a benefit, not a punishment, not a extra work to do. And it applies to them personally as well. So remind them, hey, you do a computer at home. This is for your own benefit as a person, personally and professionally. And you'll sleep better at night.
Absolutely. Now, I normally ask my guests for the last thought they want people to take away from this. I think you've just given that to me there. I think it's a
Yeah, I
great
think that fits.
to leave on, not lead on. Guys, I want to say thank you for bearing with us being with us and listening to us talk about this. This is something that is really close to my heart. I get really excited about it. I know I'm a nerd. If you need any help with all of these things, and you're doing your Cyber Hoot training or whatever it is you're doing, but you need a little bit more help, that's what I do. I help small businesses manage their tech. So reach out to me. I offer a free 30-minute breakthrough session, one per client, please. Reach out, come to askcharlieleetham.com and click the button at the top right hand corner to book that session. If you've already booked a session and you've had it and you still need help, I'm available to hire. You can book me up and I would love to help you. So reach out to me. Craig, thank you so much for your time today. I really do appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Highly impressed with the platform. I'm going to go and sign up for my own free training and just nerd out for a little bit. I think that's fantastic.
Yes. Thank you so much. And we appreciate being here.
You are most welcome. All right, guys, that's it for this interview. Make sure you catch up with my podcast. It comes out Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Mindset Monday, Walkthrough Wednesdays, and Firewall Fridays. You might get an idea of that. It's all tech focused. If you've got anything, let us know. Leave comments, like the video, subscribe to the channel, all of those good things for me. Thank you, and I will see you next time. Bye.